Hello guys, welcome back to the Beastie Room. We are going to cover today one of the most popular spiders in the hobby and something I get asked an awful lot about, and that is the Monocentropus Balfour, or as we like to say in the Beastie Room, balfouri. That's what we call them. We can't help but look at them when we have to say it. So we get asked an awful lot of questions about the actual husbandry, the general care of these guys, how we breed them, how we go about it all basically. And there seems to be some really conflicting information out there regarding this particular spider. So I thought what I would do is I will show you what we do here in the Beastie Room. Now this doesn't mean that whatever else is going on out there is wrong. This is just how I do things here, and when we have a good record of success with these guys. I think we've had 5 sacks, 6 sacks now up to date, and they're really not that difficult. And in terms of actual husbandry, they are one of the simplest spiders to look after. So I know there's a lot of fear about communals and all this sort of thing, so we're going to try and delve a little bit into that. So I think what we'll do is we will start off with our slings. So if we take it that you've just ordered your slings and they're coming in the post, and when you eventually get them, they end up like these guys here. So this is how I keep my slings. So as soon as I remove them from the female, they go into a pot like this. This is a simple low deli cup with a little bit of substrate in the bottom and one simple piece of bark. This is all you need. There is no need to overcomplicate this. So then if we just lift this up, we'll see they have actually made a web all the way through there. Look at that. And the whole thing has been picked up now, and you can see that it's all on the bottom, and they're actually falling out at the bottom as we speak. And you can see them running around down there. Now these are nice little size slings. And this is the sort of size that you'll get if you're buying them in. These are probably 2 centimetres or so now. Now, you'll see in terms of substrate, in here, I've actually got a little bit of sand mixed in with this one. A little bit of Beastie Life. There's some of our Beastie mix in this as well. So I'll just pop this back down here. And we just drop that in there. Now, when you get your guys this size, I see a lot of people, they get very small slings like this and they put them in large enclosures. If you're getting, say, half a dozen of these, this size, I would definitely not go any bigger than this 20 by 20 by 20. This is ample big enough. I personally prefer to keep them in something smaller. And then another interesting thing here is with the balfouri is water. Everybody keeps them bone dry, or it would appear that everyone keeps them bone dry. Now this is something I don't do. I don't like that aspect at all. So when I've got them in a small deli cup like this, you'll notice there's no water bowl in here, and all I do is I get my little squirter and I literally just tickle a little bit of water over the bark like so, and then I'll put a little bit down here in the substrate. And I'll only do this maybe once a week. And I find that the little balfouri slings are actually really quite thirsty little guys. They do like a good drink. So this is what I do once a week. I'll just put a little bit of water in there, a little bit in there. This is a sealed tub, so there's no ventilation in this either, which is another interesting point. No ventilation. And then in regarding food, I will get, I think there's eight slings in this one, that 2 centimetres big. And once a week, I will get a large adult female red runner, nice big fat one. And I pre-kill that, and I just lay it down in here, and I will put that in the evening. Just before lights out, I drop that in there, and then in the morning, it will all be gone. And if I put something in there that's a little bit too large and it's not all gone, I'll remove whatever's left in the morning. and this will keep your enclosure nice and clean and fresh and stop you getting things like them fungal gnats. They're a pain, they are. So that is how we look after these guys. Now, if you do decide to go and have them in a larger enclosure, I've got this one here. Now this is for a future project, this one here. Now this is a Komodo 20 by 20 by 20, and you'll see in here the substrate we've used. This is on this particular one, this has got beardy life in it, and there's also a bit of beastie substrate mixed in there just to give it a little bit of texture really, and to hold it together. Now there's 34 slings in this particular enclosure, and one of the things I hear a lot about on the net, and I'm asked a lot about, is what size enclosure should I have? Now these guys, when they're small and they're slings, as we said, we like to keep everything small. You don't want to be giving them too much space, because the most important thing is they need to find their food in order to grow. So we keep everything nice and tight, nice and small. So there's 34 in here. Now you'll see that the substrate itself is actually dry. You can see down here, it's very, very dry. And you can see where they move stuff around. And you can see they've dug tunnels down into here. There's webbing in here, there's more tunnels here. So they actually go right down deep into the substrate, and this will all be web inside here. But you can see it is actually dry. And then what we do then is once a week, let me just put that on there. Once a week, I get my trusty sprayer, and I literally just go like this, all over the top of the web, a little bit down the sides, doesn't matter. And you can put a little bit down in a corner like that, not directly where they're living, put it in the front. You can see there's not so much burrowing going on down here, so I put a little bit down there like so. And we tip a little bit over the top, and that is enough. Now I will do this once a week, and if it's nice and quiet, you'll often find that these guys will come out and they'll start feeding, start drinking the water droplets on the web. Now, trying to keep a water bowl in here, pretty much a waste of time. So this is the best way in order to give them that extra little bit of fluid. Now we can take the opportunity, now we've done that, we can just clean the front of our glass, only to the point of where the web is, because we don't want to destroy it. So we can literally just clean the front of that, so that later on, when they're all out and about, if I want to try and get a photograph or whatever, I get a nice clear shot, apart from where they've messed up. Now when it comes to food, one of the things I found with the balfouri is when they're slings and young juvies, I find mine actually do prefer crickets rather than roaches. And when they're adult, they'll take roaches no problem at all. They're quite happy with roaches. But I find when they're young, they prefer crickets. So all I do with that is we've got our web in here. All I do is literally just pour them in. Now bearing in mind there's 34 spiders in here, and they're actually getting to be quite a good size now. Now these will be upgraded very, very soon. We've got new enclosures actually ordered, and we're going to do a nice big communal with these guys in here. So what we do now is, as you can see, there is crickets everywhere, and they will start moving around on the web. And as these settle down, because I've moved them onto the desk, they're going to be a little bit slow, they're going to be a little bit cautious, and they can also hear the vibration of me talking as well. So it'll probably give them a little time, but eventually they'll start coming out and they'll start feeding. Here, they're on the move now already. Here they come. There's one right in the middle here, where that little bit of pale webbing is. There's one coming through there now. Here they go. You can see the web starting to bounce around inside. whether he's going to come out. They'll be out in a minute. Yeah, there's one down there, just grab one. Now, one of the other things that we see with these is when you're housing a big number of them, let's say there's 34 in here, we have had, on one occasion in this group, cannibalism. And I came in one morning and there was one being eaten by another one. Now, there's no need to overly panic when this has happened. It's not ideal, but it does happen from time to time. So we tend to, it's one of those things that you've got to accept. Although these are a communal spider, I don't believe they're actually communal in the true sense of the word. So we're keeping them in a very, very tight communal, and this helps alleviate a lot of that cannibalism. But occasionally you will get the odd one. Now what you want to do is keep them well fed and everything should be okay. They're starting to come through now. So what we do, we'll leave them there, and then once they get on and we move them out of here, these will actually be going, because they're for a future project, these will be going into another enclosure, but a large one for a large communal. In this one here, we've got 2 in here, and as you can see here, through the webbing, there is molts and what have you. Now these there's 2 in here, and they were put in here purely to grow on as future breeding stock. You can see the molts hanging up in the web. They web right to the top, and again we can see it's a dry substrate. This is just beastie mix in here. I don't know if we can actually see. You can't even see, but they're in the bottom there. Now these guys are in here because they're growing on, and these are about to be moved out now. They're big enough, and then what we do is we move them on into these 20 by 20 cubes. Now up here we've got, these are our breeding females, and we keep 1 female in each cube. And you see they're very simple setups, and they've all got different substrates, so we play around with different things and see how they go. But what we've found with our adult females, we find we can actually keep a water bowl with a single spider, because they don't web quite so extensively. In fact, some of them, like the one on the left hand side on the end here, hardly webs at all. This one very rarely ever webs up until it comes to a point where she's going to molt, or whether she's going to drop an egg sac, and then she'll web the front of that up, but she does very little inside. So they're very individual. This one does a lot of webbing. Now this one and this one have both been paired, so we're actually waiting for those to drop sacs now. And one of the indications that we'll get that when a sac is coming is the amount of extra webbing that they will end up doing. And that will give us a clue as to what's coming on. At the moment they're not really doing a lot, so we know we haven't really got to worry too much. We haven't got to constantly be, you know, annoying them or upsetting them, trying to see inside to see what's going on. Now with our males, we keep our males exactly the same as our adult females. This is an adult male in here, and he's actually ready for breeding. And you'll see on the side here, he has recently, only yesterday, built a sperm web, and you can see where he's been in there, and he's destroyed it now, but he would have been in there. And you can actually see, I don't know if you can see on camera, but this white line here, this here would have been where he would have laid his sperm, and it would have been collected from this edge. Right on that white edge there, that is where the sperm would have been collected up into his pedipalps. And that is what a sperm web looks like. They will always put them up in the corners, and then they deposit their sperm on top of the web, and then they crawl in the other way, so they're back to front to it, and then they load up their emboli. Now you can see there with the males, you can see he's got a really dark blue carapace. The females change, they're more of a tan colour. You see he's got very, very blue legs as well. Now you'll find with your males, they're quite skittish. And as you can see there, he's got a water bowl there as well. These guys don't web up. Once they're mature, they don't web up like the females do. So the most he will do is make a sperm web, and then that'll be his lot. So as long as you keep them, give them one piece of bark so they've got somewhere to hide if needs be. Quite often find with these, they're out and about. They don't tend to hide away too much. Now when we're getting them ready, a lot of people say about the conditioning of our balfouri. Now in terms of conditioning, I'll let you into a little secret. The conditioning side of breeding balfouris is hardly any at all. We really don't do a lot in terms of conditioning. So we don't have to worry so much about temperatures. We're not looking at dropping the temperatures to bring them into condition. You'll find in this room we sit at about 80 degrees. Now these guys, I've had them down at 75 and they're perfectly fine. And we've had them up at 85, 90, perfectly fine. So as long as you're giving them enough food and they're getting their moisture content, even as adults, we give them a water bowl so they've got water all the time. If we're having them in adults in a commune situation, then unless we can find an unwebbed corner within that commune for a water bowl, then what we will do, we will spray the web once a week. So when it comes to conditioning, it's more a case of food conditioning. So we're looking at getting our females in a nice, their abdomens up to the size of their carapace and a little tiny bit bigger if possible. Not a lot, almost the same size as their carapace. Get them feeding to that point. These are starting to jump out and get their food now. We get them up to that sort of size, and we give them a couple of big meals just prior to introducing our males. Now we always bring our male to our female and we'll pop him in, and generally speaking the whole job will be done in the first 10 or 15 minutes. It will all be over and done with, and they're very, very quick. The males will normally go in, they're very confident. As soon as they get contact with a female, she will normally lift up and away they go. They're straight on it. So they're very, very quick. So 10-15 minutes, job done. As soon as you see him walk away and she's in that trance-like state, it's time to actually remove him. We take him out, put him back in his enclosure. We'll feed him, because quite often the male balfouris will feed throughout their lifespan. So they'll carry on feeding all the time. Now, we'll give him a feed. We'll give her a couple of nice large roaches, get her up and going, and then a week later we'll pop him back in and we'll do it again. Now, if we've had two good, nice clear matings, then we call it a day, and we take our dates from them two pairings. So we'll take our dates from the very first pairing, and then we'll follow it all the way through. And then when we get to an egg sac, if we're lucky to get that far, you'll find that with these, they create like a hammock type egg sac, which is similar to things like the starburst baboons and stuff like that. They put them on the side of the wall. With these guys, they make a hammock, but they suspend it in the air. And then what she does is she sits over the top of that, and she will stay there the whole time. And she will just look after and protect it. That is all she does. So they don't actually turn their sacs, which is something important. A lot of spiders that actually produce a round egg sac, they turn them and roll them and do all sorts of things. With these, it's in that hammock and it doesn't move. It stays where it is. And they'll literally just protect it. Now, when it hatches, you will see the tiny babies. They are so small when they hatch, and they will move out into the web. Now, to give you a good idea of when it's due to be hatched, I find with my females, normally anything up to a week before it's due to hatch, you will see a whole lot more web like this in the top half of your enclosure. So they put all of this really fine web. It will go from this, like that, to like this in the last week of gestation. And I think what happens is as they hatch, they will spend a week or two underground, and then eventually they will climb out and they crawl up into this really fine webbing, and this is where they molt. And you'll see their tiny little molts hanging up in the webbing. So she's done this to enable them to actually molt out. Some will molt out underground, but I found a lot of them will come up and molt out on the top. These are little buggers, these are, look, they're crawling all over the place. And we've got some of them have actually come through now. This one's caught one. Now you can see the size of their abdomens on here. These are really nice, healthy little fellas, these. Now we know we started off with 34 or 35 in here, and we know we're one down, so when we actually empty this tank, we're hoping to have 34, but time will tell. You might lose some due to natural causes. This might happen as well. What you got to remember is when your spiders breed and they create a couple of hundred babies, with these guys it's not so many. I think the average sack on these is anywhere between 30 and 60 babies. So they're not huge sacks, but they're big enough. So yeah, so once you've actually got them hatched out, I then wait until they molt out, and then normally when they're around about a centimetre big, that's when I actually remove them and put them back to where we started in the sling pots. And then we start all over again. We move on from there. So then, as a recap, temperature wise, these guys are really, they cover a broad range in temperatures. That being said, I've kept them at 75 and I've had them at 85, and there's no difference in their behaviour really. Even when they've been at 85, and even when we've had really hot weather here, and we've had them up at, the room has been sitting at 90 degrees, I have actually put a heater, our room heater, in front of our communals, and they will still come out and go to the front glass trying to get the heat from the heater. This is in a room of doing 90 degrees. So it's very, very interesting. They seem to crave heat in that respect, but you can keep them much, much cooler and they'll do exactly the same thing. So it's just an interesting thing. If you are going to keep them at home, I would suggest, if you are going to have heat on your enclosures, I wouldn't keep them any warmer than 80 degrees. That's more than enough. And if you're going to do it, put it on the back wall of the enclosure. Never put it underneath, because you will cook them. Always put it on the back wall, and then that way they can move away or closer depending on what they want. Being a burrowing spider, they will burrow down. So if you put the heat on the bottom, they will go straight down. They can't get away from it, they can't escape. So always put your heating on the back of your enclosures. Or better still, if you can put the enclosure inside a heated enclosure, even better. All depends on what you want to do. Now, with the breeding of these, you can breed them in a communal aspect. That has been done, and there's been a few cases this year, and we've seen on Facebook, some people have had some success with breeding their females in a communal position. But it's not as successful as if you keep your females separated. So for breeding purposes, we keep our females singly, and then that way we have control and we can deal with them. If you've got them in a communal system, you've got no control. We don't know what each individual in here is doing. And when they're adults, we haven't got a clue. So you can also end up with males fighting and bits and pieces like this. So once you're communal, like with these guys, when these guys all mature and they're in their big forever home, as the males mature, we will catch them up and move them out, because we don't want a bunch of males in there harassing everybody all the time, because they are randy little buggers. So they will constantly harass one another and it will upset the community. So we will remove our males as they mature. We might leave the odd one in there just to see what happens, you know, because if you do get a sack out of it, it's all good. You know, it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. But if you want to get seriously into breeding your balfouri, I would suggest keeping them separate. Keep your female separate, and then you can control and watch every stage of the job. And it's far more rewarding in that respect because you get to see everything all the time. So it's a really cool way of doing them. Now, yeah, so as a recap, keep them well fed, but not fat. Just keep them well fed, and do water them. I really do recommend this. Spray your enclosures. Doesn't need a lot. You saw with this, we don't put an awful lot on there, and that will be dry in a couple of hours. It'll all be gone. But they do really appreciate it. And if you've got your adults singly, give them a water bowl. They will make use of it. I quite often catch mine out drinking in the bowls, so they will use it. Now, when we set up an enclosure, you see we've got some substrate here. This is, to all intents and purposes, dry. Yeah, we can squeeze that and it still just falls apart. But there is a dampness to it. Look, there's a slight dampness there, but as you can see, it brushes off real easy. So it's not wet. It's only just very, very finely damp. This is what we would use to set up our enclosures. So we'll put that all in there first, put some branches in, a bit of bark, whatever you want to use. But this is the sort of thing we would keep. And if you can try and maintain your enclosure like that, or even if it gets a little bit drier than that, just make sure you add some water to the front corner or whatever. Depending, wherever they're not actually going, that's what you want to water. Right. Well, I hope we've sort of dispelled a few of the myths, and this is just how we do things here. And like I say, we've had some reasonable success this year. We've had 5 or 6 sacks this year, so I think we're doing it right. And hopefully, if you follow these general guidelines, you'll do well as well. I'm sure you will. Right then, don't forget, be calm, be gentle, and love your spiders. And I'll see you soon, guys.